parents settle in after they arrived from Africa, and he was even there at Harambe's birth, cutting the umbilical cord.
Wow, okay. So he was Papa for real.
Then Jerry.
Okay, Jerry. What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Smooth back again with another video. This one is by Casual Geographic. Little backstory. I already know who this guy is. I damn near watched like all of his videos. So like if you guys want me to react to some of his stuff, it'll all be videos that I have checked out of his. I've been a fan of him before he even made a YouTube channel. Like I believe, an OG fan. I found him when he was on TikTok making these as like 60-second info facts about animals, and I fell in love, bro. I just happened to remember when he first created a YouTube channel. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm subscribing, and been watching video after video after video. This one I haven't watched yet. I done seen that he's came back, so I'm here to check this one out, and it's why Harambe's death was the right choice for the wrong reasons. If I'm not mistaken, it is now almost been a decade since that incident happened. And for those of you who are unaware of what I am talking about, there was a mother with her son, I believe, or kids. I'm not sure how many there were, but one of her kids fell into the gorilla inhabit at at the zoo. And though it didn't seem like the gorilla was as malicious or aggressive towards the kid, other than like grabbing him and like moving him around, they ended up having to sadly put the gorilla down, and it created a lot of buzz and a lot of attention towards him and just overall the zoo and animals alike during this time period. It was crazy. Like, this was a worldwide thing. People created memes, like memes. People, it was to the point where like people who had passed that were real life characters in our world, he was being added to that after his passing through like Photoshop and like all that stuff. So like it was a really big deal. I'm excited to see what he says about it, and he's always funny, and I like just hearing him explain stuff. It's great, and he's comedic with it. It's nice in this age. He's able to display it in a way that it's entertaining to listen to, and it's easier to grasp the knowledge. Not only that, it doesn't feel like you're watching a 15-20 minute video for those long videos that he has. But before we dive in, make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you love the Smooth Squad family, ring the notification bell so you don't miss another content. Let's hop into the video.
If you want to inflict emotional damage on a millennial, remind them that the Harambe kid either is or is about to be a teenager. In a couple months, it'll be a year short of a decade since the gorilla was prematurely perp-walked off the census.
Yeah.
Despite being named after a Swahili term for coming together, Harambe's death has been no less divisive. But the closer you get to the full story, with crucial context, the question becomes less of whether the zoo was right for turning the legacy of Bob Marley into a hashtag, and more of everything that went wrong to force the zoo to pull the trigger. Because Harambe's death was the right choice for the wrong reasons. Now hear me out, I'm not blaming the gorilla, in fact quite the opposite. Literally everyone involved but the gorilla ultimately failed him, and in about 10 minutes, I'm gonna show you just how horrendous Harambe got done. The same 10 minutes it took for them to end him.
Dang.
Flashback to 2016. Eggs were $1.68, a light skin and Under Armours was no-scoping entire teams, and Kanye was still Kanye. But he made graduate, all was good, until a 3-year-old canon event changed the course of mankind. On May 28, 2016, a mother took 4 children to the Cincinnati Zoo and got to the gorilla world habitat when the youngest boy said he wanted to go swimming with the gorillas. She went back and forth with him and then turned around to start putting kids in strollers when she heard a splash, followed by immediate screaming. Like any other human, she went to the railing, and that's when her mind took an indelible screenshot when she realized,
Cincinnati 911. Hi, my son's out in the zoo.
Oh, this is the actual.
There's a male gorilla standing over destroy him. I need someone to contact the zoo, please. He's dragging my son. I can't watch this.
In an unfortunate case of free will, the 3-year-old climbed the 3-foot fence, army crawled through 4 feet of bush, and before anyone could grab him and save the timeline, he fell 15 feet straight into the gorilla mode, where he was confronted by 450 pounds of adult primate. Harambe didn't seem especially aggressive, but watching him ragdoll the toddler likely took years off his mother's life.
Okay,
no one could say what was going through the gorilla's mind at the time. But we know what went last, because at about 4:10 p.m., about 10 minutes after the boy fell in, a member of the Cincinnati Zoo Dangerous Animal Response Team life-retired Harambe with a bullet to the head. And life as we knew it was never the same. The slain simian was mourned by millions and memed by even more, to the point where there are people who use their right to vote on the corpse of a Kennedy gorilla.
Yeah, bro, that's
the most
crazy.
political statement that will ever come out of this channel. But before we can judge what had to be an impossible decision, it's only fair to look at every angle, starting with the nature of gorillas. Gorillas aren't the menaces to society and skyscrapers we thought they were. Male gorillas are
them and sharks got it bad, and piranhas.
It's been said that the males that babysit more are considered more attractive to a tribe of hairy women. That's how they got their name. And
that's crazy.
Turn on than size, strength, or stat.
The term gorilla originates from the ancient Greek word gorillae, meaning a tribe of hairy women, described by the Carthaginian that's how navigator Hano in his account of a voyage along the coast of Africa. Did not know that. Genuinely.
They fight so hard for custody. You've never seen a gorilla hit the burners like that. But gorillas don't need mori, they'll even step up for children that aren't theirs. A couple years back, the alpha gorilla of a group in Rwanda got sick, and since in sickness and in health is a human construct, the 4 gorillas of the group left.
Who wouldn't have thought gorillas would have been like that crazy
with their progeny
with
as well.
youngins?
Infants barely old enough to feed themselves, it should have been curtains. But this story had a plot twist. The sick male had a brother, Kubaha, and Unc stepped up and looked after them. They'd sleep in his nest, treat him like a literal jungle gym, and he single-handedly kept the next generation up. And Kubaha wasn't an anomaly. In 53 years of gorilla research, it's proven that orphan mountain gorillas that lose their mothers early on don't have a greater risk of becoming a statistic because the males will often step in. Not only did a different study show the exact opposite happens to baby chimps, monkeys, and baboons that get the Bambi treatment, even if they do survive, they inherit 0 social rank and virtually no chance at having children. It's the same story for animals like elephants, orcas, and hyenas. Being motherless is social cyanide, but not gorillas. Having one mom short of a full house, has 0 effect on their social status, and it's believed that since mama gorillas often dip out before their babies mature, the males have evolved to cushion the blow. Plus, with chimpanzees murking monkeys, bush babies, that's a bush baby, and even doikers for food.
That's the thing that likes, that's more.
Gorillas pretty much being knuckle-walking lawnmowers probably doesn't hurt Harambe's case. Gorillas go out of their way to avoid conflict, and you really won't see them beating on something weaker than they are, unless they did something to deserve it. But there's always a but. The rules of nature often change when you're talking about captivity. A wild orca has apparently never depulsed a person, but those confined to a glorified fishbowl have a body count.
Yeah.
Only mate, date, and procreate no less than the average black bear. But those in captivity often get less play than Helen Keller's
and it is hard to. That's crazy, bro.
Reject their own babies, and it happens a lot more than you would think. So maybe the parental instinct doesn't apply as much to a gorilla behind the glass. Yeah, no, because if I had a nickel for every time someone's son,
you see what that means? You see what being for the prison for humans or for a zoo for animals. You see what that does?
On August 16th, 1996, another 3-year-old fell nearly 24 feet into the Brookfield Zoo.
1996, damn.
In a scene you've definitely seen before, 8-year-old Binti Draw climbed down to the boy, cradled him in her gorilla arms for nearly 60 feet, and
I remember hearing this.
Where officials could get him. But what you might not know was that Binti was one of those gorillas rejected by her mother and was hand-raised by humans. Part of this raising meant her caretakers had to train her to be a mother once she became pregnant with the same baby riding shotgun while she rescued the boy. Part of this training included
I do remember hearing about this
for checkups, so there was low-key an argument as to whether this was an actual gorilla guardian angel or just an animal doing what it had been trained. Well, almost a decade earlier in 1986, 5-year-old Levin Merritt followed the same script, falling into the gorilla pit and knocking himself all the way out. And 25-year-old Yumbo stood protectively over the boy, gatekeeping any other gorilla from him.
Bro.
And when the child regained consciousness and cried out, instead of matching his energy, the silverback calmly led his family to a small hut on the other side of the enclosure. But unlike Binti, Yumbo wasn't human-raised or trained in child care. This was actual gorilla free will that looked after the injured kid. So now you might be confused, because if you were on the fence on the Harambe happening, hearing about their social psychology and the gorilla history lesson would have surely kicked you onto the Harambe side. Well, every gorilla is different, so let's talk about the story of Harambe. You know, before he became a hashtag. Harambe was born
I'm gonna let the video go. I'm not gonna say nothing yet.
Brownsville, Texas, May 27th, 1999, meaning he had just turned 17 when he got sniped. Just like Binti, he was also rejected by his mother Kayla when he was only 3 weeks old. So zoo director Jerry Stone hand-raised Harambe, taking him home. The tiny gorilla was by all means his family. Jerry was actually the one to help Harambe's grandparents settle in after they arrived from Africa, and he was even there at Harambe's birth, cutting the umbilical cord.
Wow, okay.
At midnight to feed him.
So he was Papa for real.
Than Jerry.
Okay, Jerry.
A lovable troublemaker. He'd do things like throw water at female keepers and run away. He'd steal blankets just to give keepers an excuse to chase him. He'd even climb walls to get his keepers' attention just so he could fall backwards and make them catch him. By every account, Harambe meant well, but there was a point where Jerry stopped getting in the cage with him. Not because he was aggressive, but as he got bigger and stronger, there was a legitimate chance he could accidentally roughhouse Stone into eternal submission. But Jerry also noted that Harambe always looked after his siblings, fully embracing the big brother role. But on January 6th, 2002, before Harambe was even 3, someone left chlorine cleaning tablets way too close to a space heater, causing a leak of toxic chlorine gas that suffocated the gorillas. Zookeepers immediately called EMTs, and by administering oxygen, they were able to revive 8 of the gorillas. But there were 3 that never woke up: Harambe's mother, brother, and sister. Yeah, Harambe got hoed by humanity long before Cincinnati. Speaking of which, almost 10 years later, in 2014, Harambe was now 15, and time came for him to be relocated to hopefully start his own troop. Jerry actually pushed for Harambe to be sent to Cincinnati, that way he could contribute to their breeding program. And in September, the gorilla named after a Bob Marley song was transferred to the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden. And less than 2 years later, he would exist only as a statue. So there, now you have more background information than 90% of anyone who's given their opinion. Everything so far points against Harambe being a threat to the toddler, yet experts like Jane Goodall, Jack Hanna, and primatologist Franz de Waal all seem to agree the zoo made the right choice. And I'm with them. Harambe had to die. But why? Basically, it was the best of a bad situation. A lot of people say tranquilizers, but tranks don't work the same way they do on TV. It can take 10 minutes to take effect, even longer when the animals turned up.
And if the animal's aggressive with that,
in Churchill, Manitoba, and the first bear was slept and put in polar bear jail. Yes. But the second bear had no reaction to the same trank. If anything, it probably made him mad. But the real reason tranquilizing wasn't an option, this is Cha-Cha. Cha-Cha the chimp. Cha-Cha went full Caesar.
I remember this.
In Japan, and I want you to see what happened the moment he got darted. That man was a second away from becoming an Instagram reel. Animals don't understand the concept of anesthesia, but they do understand getting shot in the back. And in those 10 minutes
he
to take effect,
was tight. Look at that, bro. He like, yo, what you doing, bro? What you
keep rescue the kid while distracting Harambe. But here's the thing. The moment the kid fell in, zoo officials signaled for all the gorillas to come inside. The 2 females complied, but Harambe, he was also using free will. Clearly, he wasn't in the mood to cooperate. The last argument is that Harambe wasn't hurting the kid. In fact, it looks like he was protecting him. I actually agree. I think the father instinct was doing a lot.
Yeah, it looked like he,
here's the thing,
in the video, was helping.
50-pound immature teenager who never had a kid or was trained for it. He could have killed that kid completely by accident. This isn't 25-year-old Yumbo. Young gorillas play rough, and one hard pull could rip his arm out of the socket, and too hard of a drag could bash the 3-year-old's head against a rock. Also, Harambe was clearly stressed out. The situation was a time bomb. The little boy freaking out and screaming, suddenly running away, or even just looking Harambe in the eye could have been enough to light the fuse. And speaking of time, don't forget, that kid was in gorilla custody for 10 minutes. Might not seem like much to you, but let it be your bloodline.
That'd be a lifetime, bro.
It cost you 10 years. Now, what they should have done, in my non-professional online opinion, was get anyone who wasn't a keeper, paramedic, or zoo vet Get him out of there, form a perimeter, something. I feel like all this could have been avoided if you didn't have a whole coliseum yelling at my mans. Silent game would have been golden, but at that point it was too late for all that. So the last option meant erasing an endangered species and future father. I don't like it, you don't like it, nobody's happy, but let's be real. Think about what the conversation would be if that kid became a chalk outline right there. Well, I can tell you, because it's happened. November 4th.
It definitely has happened for sure. I can believe that. I wonder what he's about to get into.
4th, 2012, Pittsburgh Zoo. Mother lifts her 2-year-old over the railing for a better view. Mother ignores several warnings and signs. Mother somehow lets child slip, and Maddox Durkosh fell, bounced off a
It's the picture, bro.
Phones and cameras, and touches earth inside the enclosure. Problem was, the toddler landed with the African wild dogs, the most efficient pack hunters in Africa, the ones infamous for turning body to buffet before it can pass away. Look, I can spare you the details. Just know it was quick, it was gruesome, and there was nothing anyone could do. The Durkoshes would file a wrongful death lawsuit against the zoo, seeking $300,000 because you can't put a price on life, but you can pay a lawyer to try. The family and the zoo would reach a confidential settlement. The endangered dogs were all relocated, except for the one shot by cops, and the entire exhibit was repurposed for another endangered African predator, the cheetah. You know, for the longest, I thought the zoo got screwed, but what I never knew was that in May of the same year, some of the same wild dogs dug out of their den and got the entire zoo put on lockdown. And as early as 2007, a member of the zoo safety committee explicitly warned of guests dangling children over the exhibit opening and advised them to install plexiglass to cover it. But no changes were made until a kid got eviscerated 5 years later. Now, don't think I'm letting the mom off. I got a lot of thoughts, and they're all explicit. But the zoo was liable and negligent, and it cost them and the dogs, even though common sense would have saved the day. But common sense would have been a godsend on Christmas Day 2007, San Francisco Zoo. Look, we've all heard the story of Tatiana the venge-lusting tiger, so here's what we know. 3 guys, 17-year-old Carlos Sousa Jr. and the 19 and 23-year-old Dullywall brothers taunted a Siberian tiger. Pine cones and sticks were likely thrown at the tiger. The brothers' father admitted that the boys were drunk. Tatiana escaped, murked Sousa, and mauled the brothers until she was eventually shot by cops. And the Dullywall family settled a suit against the zoo for $900,000, and the Sousa family settled a wrongful death suit for an undisclosed amount. Both brothers would use their second chance at life to get into several run-ins with the law, one including a drunken fight with police, and the younger brother would pass away in 2012 due to unknown causes. By every metric, they fucked around and found out, and the 2 that lived came up almost $1 million off it. But 2 things can be true. The zoo screwed up bad because days after the attack, they said the moat Tatiana had escaped from was at least 20 feet tall. Turns out it was 12 and a half, a full 4 feet lower than federal safety standards. And if you know tigers, that is one
they
fuck of an oops.
Lead, bro.
But also, after killing Sousa, Tatiana tracked the brothers down. But because cafe employees refused to let the 2 in, the Siberian Fury pulled up outside the cafe and mauled them again. It took 6 full minutes for zoo employees to realize that the brothers weren't drunk idiots screaming. They were drunk idiots screaming, but not lying about a tiger John Wicking them. And because the zoo was under a Code 1 lockdown, it took another 5 minutes for zoo security to let police and fire units in. Those extra 10 minutes mean a lot when you're actively getting turned out by a tiger, and it probably would have saved Sousa's life. 2 things can be true. Tweedledee, Dim, and Dumbass pissed off an apex predator and earned themselves a nomination for a Darwin Award while getting an endangered species past tense in the process. But the zoo was also painfully negligent in every aspect, especially since just a year before, keeper Lori Cummingen was mauled by the same tiger while feeding her through the enclosure's grill, and Tatiana's temper tore the skin off her arm, resulting in several surgeries, skin grafts, and California OSHA fining the zoo for safety violations.
And y'all still didn't fix what y'all needed with the enclosure? Yo, that's hella.
And after Tatiana's final act, the zoo would raise the
negligent,
from 12 and a half to 19 feet. So you see, the zoo and Harambe were screwed the moment someone spawned into his enclosure. And really, Harambe was dead the moment he chose free will. In fact, if that child would have died, Harambe certainly would have been past tense, all the gorillas might have been packed out, and the zoo would have been sued beyond oblivion. The zoo would modify Gorilla World by raising the outer barrier and loading up on netting and fencing, but the real victims here were Harambe, the child, and gorillas as a whole. And as much as I want to dump on the mom, well, the internet's kind of done that already, but kids are walking kamikazes. Not excusing it, because damn it, watch your crotch and the things that come out, but you don't think a kid will, till they do. And mama, I love you, I really do, but when I was about knee-high, my mom turned away for a second at the park, and when she turned back, she saw me on the other side of a pond leaning in. And if both my parents didn't go Usain Bolt and catch me before I fell in, well, we know how that story ends. I also almost got kidnapped. And I only say that now because my mother never lets me forget it. But yeah, that's gonna do it. Drink
That's
water,
crazy.
hug your mother, hold your kids. They're
So,
stupid. Rest in
yeah,
Harambe,
there you
Harambe,
have it,
and I'ma
guys.
see y'all.
I definitely didn't know about his upbringing at all. Harambe's life was kind of crazy. So, one, you were brought into an adoptive family because his mother left him at 3 weeks. I don't know how old you are in gorilla years at that time, but I'm assuming you're still pretty young. And in the pictures, shout out, I think it was Jerry? Yeah, he took care of him and raised him like it was his own until he physically just could not anymore. Like Harambe, from the sounds and looks of it, had a good, a good life with people who genuinely cared about him and the other gorillas in the habitat, and was a good help to their existence. It's definitely unfortunate what happened with what the mother and her son had to go through. It's definitely unfortunate what happened to Harambe and probably what he was going through as well. But it's a double-edged sword, I think, honestly. Like he said in the video, it was gonna be a ticking time bomb regardless. You have the boy who is obviously, he's conscious. So at this point, he's in the enclosure, freaking out, probably screaming. That's, that's hurting, I guess probably Harambe's his mental, making him kind of go wild a little bit. Same with everybody else around him, including the mother screaming as well. That probably caused a lot of anxiety for him, and it did not look like it was going to end well in any situation about this. And like he said, had Harambe went inside and followed protocol with the rest of the gorillas who actually did go into their exhibits, maybe he would still be here today with us and maybe having a totally different discussion than the one that we are having. On the other side of things, he had a nice life. He was a great gorilla, and from knowing that knowledge of them having that parental role towards it looks like not only gorillas and not their own gorillas, but humans as well. It seems like he was just really going into that parental mode, making sure and seeing if he was okay, and that was like, the kid was safe. That's natural gorilla instinct that he was, doing. And aside from the obvious dragging around, because he is dealing with a kid and not one of his own gorillas, like he was tending and looking like he was protecting and caring for the boy. So like, it's just one of those unfortunate things where a lot of things could have been prevented on both ends, but just in general, it sucks that we had to go through what we go through. Rest in peace, Harambe, for sure. This video was enjoyable, actually. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Leave down in the comments what more do you want me to see or react to next. I got y'all. Tear Smooth out. I'm gonna need you to subscribe, my nigga.